One. Awesome. Welcome, everyone. Welcome, welcome. Thank you so much to all of our attendees joining us today. Welcome, welcome. Thank you so much, everybody joining us today. We're going to give about 2 minutes for folks to join us in here. As they're trickling in, I thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. We'll love to see in the chat as you're joining in too, if you can add in the chat where you're joining us from. I know we have folks here who are from the East Coast, but we love to see kind of a listing of where we're all joining in from. I see some West Coast folks in the chat already. Sacramento, DC. Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us today, folks. Let's give about 1 more minute before we join. And if this is your first lit event, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. And I want to give also a special shout out to our partner this afternoon as well, CNA, for joining us in partnership with this event. I see folks from Texas, Northern Cal. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. Awesome, awesome. We'll just give 1 more minute. We'll begin shortly. Amazing. I'm going to go ahead and start us off as folks come in, we'll let them in. But once again, thank you so much to our partner this afternoon, CNA, for partnering up with us today and hosting this amazing webinar focusing on cybersecurity in honor of Cybersecurity Month, but also too for wrapping up our amazing Hispanic Heritage Month campaign this month as well. To all of you who are in the network, thank you so much for joining us today. And we are Latinas in Tech. And so what we do here in this network is provide opportunities for our network to connect, build community, but most importantly, grow in their careers within tech. I know that we are serving Latinas, but we also welcome allies alike as well. And we do this by offering opportunities for mentorship, recruitment, and of course, career development. We have a network of about 27,000 members, again, women and allies, and we have just all across the globe. So not just here in the US, we have members in Canada, we have members in Mexico, Dublin, London, Madrid, Brazil, you name it. So I highly encourage you to who are in this network today for the first time to visit our website to learn more about how to connect with our community. But also too, I will encourage you to scan this QR code here on the screen to learn about how to connect with us, how to become a new member, how to find a new chapter near you, but also too, there are more ways to connect with CNA as well through our network. So I'll leave this here for 1 more minute for you all to get the information and scan it. And again, to those who are new to the network, the website link is latinasintech.org, which you will find on the left panel of the screen. Awesome. So now I want to pass it over to our speakers of today, which will be focusing on the conversation between cybersecurity and opportunities within Latinas in Tech. So without further ado, I'm going to pass the mic to our moderator for this afternoon. Take it away.
Great. Thank you so much, Juana. Good afternoon, everyone. Muy buenas tardes a todos. My name is Elisa Soto, and I am the Chief People Officer at CNA Corporation. I am honored to be your moderator for today's panel discussion on a topic that is critical to every individual and also every organization in our connected world, which is cybersecurity. As we wrap up Hispanic Heritage Month, we celebrate the rich contributions Hispanic and Latino communities offer to our society. In particular, we are proud to partner with Latinas in Tech, a nonprofit organization dedicated to empowering Latina women working in technology to be innovators and leaders. This collaboration underscores our commitment to fostering a diverse and inclusive environment within the cybersecurity field. It's fitting that we have chosen cybersecurity as our topic for today, as October is Cybersecurity Awareness Month. This observance serves as a vital reminder of the importance of safeguarding our digital lives against a range of evolving threats. Cybersecurity Awareness Month is an excellent opportunity for us to enhance our understanding and ensure that we are equipped with the best practices to protect our personal and professional data. We are privileged to have with us three distinguished experts from CNA Corporation. For those who are not familiar, CNA Corporation is a nonprofit organization that operates on the cutting edge of data and analysis to provide insights and solutions to some of the most pressing issues we face today. Now, I'd like to invite each of our esteemed panelists to introduce themselves. So please share with us your name, your role at CNA, and how long you have worked with us. Let me go ahead and I'll invite Glenda to start kick us off.
All right. Good afternoon. My name is Glenda Lopez, and I am the Director of Digital Strategy here at CNA. In my current role, I drive innovation, and basically I make sure that our IT roadmap aligns with our overall strategic goals for our organization. I also manage data governance, IT and cybersecurity policies and SOPs. And I've been with CNA for about 1.5 years now. Thank you.
Great. Ariel?
Thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Ariel Michaelman Ribeiro. I'm a research analyst on the Cyber IT Systems and Networks team that's part of CNA. This is the federally funded Research and Development Center, the FFRDC. At the FFRDC, we do studies and analysis on a wide variety of topics for the Navy and Marine Corps mainly, and other DoD services as well. In addition to directing projects, I also serve as the FFRDC Cyber Research Coordinator. In that role, I work internally to make sure our cyber studies across all the different teams like manpower, organization, cyber operations are doing the best cyber research that we can do. And then I also have an external piece of that role in sharing our work with the Navy, Marine Corps, and other DoD cyber leaders so they understand what we're doing and how we can help them. I've been with CNA about a dozen years. Thanks for having me here. Gracias por esta invitación y obrigada por esta oportunidad.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Ariel Michaelman. Adam, over to you.
Thanks so much for having me, everyone. My name is Adam Monsalve. I have been with CNA a little over 6 years now. I'm with our Enterprise Systems and Data Analysis Division within our Institute for Public Research. Whereas Ariel was mentioning all of her support for the DoD and the Navy, I work on our non-DoD side. So I largely support the Federal Aviation Administration and NASA in a lot of their cybersecurity initiatives, largely focused in integrating unmanned aircraft systems into the National Airspace System. So that involves a lot of sort of research prototyping and concept development as it relates to cybersecurity, and sort of helping that initiative on both of those agencies' fronts. I appreciate the invite and look forward to the conversation.
Perfect. Thank you so much, everyone. Muchísimas gracias a todos. Now, I'd like to ask each of you to share with us why cybersecurity and how did you get here? What inspired you to pursue a career in cybersecurity, right? So, and please ask me to repeat. I know this is a loaded question. So, what inspired you to get into cybersecurity? How did you end up in your role at CNA, and what did your career path look like? So it's a 3-part question. So I'm going to go ahead and start with Glenda.
All right. So I always like to say that, I started my journey back in the day when there wasn't computers everywhere, right? My first mission was protecting my personal diary from my brothers who were the hackers. So from a very young age, I knew that data protection was super important. Fast forward, my career started at Bank of America. I worked and managed ATM debit and credit card fraud protection. And in that role, what I really, take from this, and the part that I love, is that it was the first Spanish speaking team. So again, I'm dating myself with all of this, but back before computers, but Bank of America, we had computers. But really it was about 40 people. I love being part of that group. And from there, I moved over to identity access management with Bank of America. I got to work with some really cool and amazing people. I managed a team of folks in India and Costa Rica. And one thing that I remember from that role is that within identity access management, you think about Bank of America has over, at the time, 350,000 employees. So our workload in 1 month, we would process over 1 million access requests a month. So again, the great thing about that is I had the privilege to lead automation projects even before, that term digital transformation was actually a key business term, right? So I stayed with Bank of America for about 17 years in different, management roles. My story then progresses where I had a phone call one day out of the blue, and I had a previous manager who worked for Bank of America called me up and asked me to join her at Aetna, which is now Aetna CVS. So for me, I was like, oh, why not? I've been with the same company for 17 years. I thought it was like the perfect opportunity, right, to really branch out and test myself. So, and that job did really test me. So I managed, for Aetna policies, SOPs, data governance type of role for about 2 years. And then again, I got a phone call, and a different person that I had worked with at a different company invited me to join his team. So what could I say? Yes, right? It was another great opportunity. And from there, I moved out of the public sector, being Bank of America, into the nonprofit area. And so now, here I am navigating my second company with the same leader. So that's been my journey. But what's been, making me motivated, the key takeaway, I guess what I'm saying here is that for me, networking is incredibly important, right? Doing a lot of things that, for example, mentioned with, Bank of America being one of the first people to have like a Spanish speaking group. So being the first in a lot of these different areas is what keeps me motivated. Another example is, being a woman in tech, a lot of the times when we go to these conferences, we're, one in the room. Now, I definitely think things have changed.
I think we lost Glenda. Glenda, you
Uh-oh,
still there? Okay,
I'm
you're
still
back.
here. Can you hear me? Okay. I don't know what else you heard, but I think I was done from there.
Okay, all right then. Well,
Okay.
thank you. I would say, Glenda, thank you so much for that. What resonated with me from your story, right, cybersecurity and your career path is you did mention networking is very important, right? But relationships, right? Those relationships that you build throughout your career, right? Early on, mid-career, late in your career, you had these opportunities because you had that really good relationship and a well-established relationship with someone that kept calling you, and they called you because they knew what you brought to the table. But had you not really had those relationships, right, you probably would not be here. So I am grateful for your relationships because you're at CNA. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
All right, let's go ahead and Adam, same questions for you.
Thank you. So it's interesting. I feel like I'm going to offer a very contrasting picture from Glenda, and I didn't think about cybersecurity at all for a good chunk of my career. So my story. So I going into undergrad, I thought I wanted to be a doctor, and I got a double major in chemistry and biology, and then I realized I didn't want to be a doctor, and I started working in a lab, and I really liked research. And I said, and my advisor was like, well, you can go do more research in grad school and like figure it out later. So I got my PhD in materials engineering, and like that kind of got dull. And one of my colleagues, and harkening back to the importance of relationships, one of my colleagues I worked very closely with in grad school had come to CNA, and I was talking to her, and she was like, look at like the thing that I liked and the thing I think that you liked about what we did in grad school was not the specific domain that we were working in, but it was the problem solving element of it. And so I came to CNA looking for a new challenge, as I had done a couple times now previously. And I was kind of thrust into this project focused on cybersecurity, fully acknowledging that I had no experience in the domain at the time. And so I think, and then so I basically just jumped right in, attended webinars, did trainings as much as possible, and kind of got up to speed as quickly as possible to support our clients' needs. And I think that the takeaway from for me is that like it's never too late to join this industry, and it's really just a matter of find something that you are interested in, and that will be the driver that like takes you where you want to go. Like I easily could have come into my project and kind of, I don't know, not gone the extra mile and not taken the additional sort of extracurricular steps to study and learn and sort of bring myself to a place of becoming a subject matter expert. And so now I'm leading projects with the agency. I've brought ourselves new work with NASA, and we're working on these really cool projects with them and just pioneering relationships with other agencies, and like the ability to kind of just take ownership of something and make it your own, figure out where your passion is in that topic and kind of drive your career based on that sort of passion is I think that will be my take home message here for everyone on the panel and on the call.
Great. Thanks so much, Adam. Yeah, do what you love, right? And keep looking for that until you find it. And then if that means change a career, join, later than you thought, was the right time for that career move or transition. It doesn't matter. Do what you love. And if you're passionate about it, it's going to come easy to you. And you're going to enjoy what you're doing every day. So Ariel.
Thank you. Yeah, definitely agree with those sentiments. I also didn't start with cybersecurity, but sort of found my way here. My background, I started with a bachelor's degree in physics. I really enjoyed physics and technical skills. Also studied Spanish as an undergrad, so it's good to have diverse interests. I went ahead and got a PhD in physics, and I did research after that as well at 2 national laboratories. And at that point, decided I sort of had enough of the bench level research. My research was pretty basic, and I wanted to do something that was more real world and applied. And that's where I started looking for other opportunities and found CNA. CNA is it's a nice place because they bring people in with certain skills, but then are very open to training you in different areas. And especially in the FFRDC in particular, this Federal Research Development Center, they bring in a lot of science PhDs, math PhDs for your research skills, the ability to shape a problem, to ask the right questions, to collect data, do analysis, and then make recommendations to military leaders that those skill sets are helpful with what we do. And then they teach us sort of the military side of things. And so I started, so in the FFRDC, we do air warfare, for example, surface warfare, undersea warfare, as well as cyber warfare. And that was something that caught my attention because it's a very dynamic area. It's actually one of the few warfare areas where we're in contact with the enemy on a daily basis. There's a lot of activity. Adversaries are constantly scanning networks, trying to get in. So there's a lot going on there. So I started to build up my expertise in that area in working on cyber studies. I was able to observe some military exercises that involved cyberspace operations. At the FFRDC, we also have what we call our field program, where we embed analysts at Navy and Marine Corps commands around the world to advise the senior leaders, the admirals and generals on warfare analysis. And I was able to serve as CNA's embedded analyst at the Navy's Fleet Cyber Command up in Fort Meade, Maryland. So that was another great way to get exposed to all the different types of cyber operations going on and learn about that. I also was able to take a SANS course. I don't know if anybody's familiar with SANS, but SANS. They run a lot of cyber training, and that was a great way to get a certification as a Global Industrial Cybersecurity Professional, GICSP, that's focused on the subset of operational technology part of cybersecurity. So earning that certification helped with building up expertise in that area and then applying that to helping Navy and Marine Corps.
Thank you so much, Ariel. Really appreciate all of those responses. The next question is going to be for Glenda and Ariel. So cybersecurity is a broad field, covering areas like network security, incident response, ethical hacking, and more. Could you each share your thoughts on the different areas of work within cybersecurity and what roles are in demand and what are the required skills for those roles? So, Ariel, since you just went, I'm going to go ahead and move over to Glenda.
All right. So one thing I want to point out is that there are about 700,000 open jobs out there in the cybersecurity field. I mean, that's huge, right? So definitely we're in demand. But another thing I wanted to point out is that of the jobs, the number of jobs that are filled, only 6% are filled with Latinos and 2% being Latinas. So we all have a call to action, right? We need to encourage, we need to support organizations like this for, Latinas in tech and encourage our younger generation of women and Latinos to participate and understand that they can do it too, right? Because that's a huge gap, right? So anyway, so out of the 700,000 jobs that are currently out there, I would say that what's in demand, skills in like cloud security, talked about like threat intelligence, regulatory compliance, and incident response, I would say, is particularly sought after. If you were looking for a role within cloud security, I'm going to say majority of organizations, right? We've all moved to the cloud. So it's about protecting our cloud environment, which is critical. So in those types of roles, you're going to see like your cloud security engineers, your cloud architects. The type of knowledge that you'll need is some type of understanding of cloud platforms, familiarity with AWS, Azure, or even Google Cloud, right? Another one that I would say for, threat intelligence, that role is really around analyzing, gathering information about current threats, emerging threats and what's out there. So for that type of role, I would say you want to focus on your analytical skills, analyzing, being able to analyze data, recognizing threat patterns. And another key thing I would say is communication. And I think that's with, any role that you seek. It's making, what like from IT and a cybersecurity perspective is, everything's very technical and it's how to bridge that technical language over to the business and make it easy for everyone to understand. So I think that's critical in those types of roles. Another role that I would say is very sought after is training and awareness. And those roles, revolve around educating our employees about compliance requirements and best practices. But really generally, I think for any role, it's a combination of your technical skills, analytical skills, and having a proactive mindset is really essential for your success. And my whole theme for this conversation is really going to be around the power of networking and continuous, learning. Staying up to date, connecting with other professionals in the field to help you. Mentorship, right, is another great way to propel yourself into these roles. And staying current with the current threat, being your skills sharp. I think you lost me again. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, I can
Okay.
hear you. We lost you for about 2 seconds, so
Okay.
we were able to get the gist of what you were saying there at the end. Anything else, Glenda?
Nope, I think that sums it up for me. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Yes, you know, the education and awareness, I would say, is really critical. You know, for someone who is not in cybersecurity, and I'm not an expert in this field, right? And I'm sure that more than just me has received that dreaded letter of your, data was, there was a data breach, and in fact, I got one last week, and I had to reach out to our experts at CNA to ask them, what does this mean and what do I do? And, and they were able to steer me in the right direction, and also give me some pointers on this is what you should do to avoid, being kind of susceptible to this kind of activity. So I would say training and education is very important. So Ariel, I'd like to ask you to answer the question as well.
Thank you. Well, Glenda really gave a great overview, hitting on all the different areas within cyber. So that was really great. I guess I'll just add the way that we think about cyber in the Department of Defense is sort of three categories: the offensive cyberspace operations, defensive cyberspace operations, and what they call the DoD Information Network operations, DoD Ops. So the offensive, we don't really talk about here, but that includes like actual cyber attack as well as cyber espionage. Defensive cyber operations is when it's against a specific threat. So the operations going against a specific incident. And then the DoD Information Network operations is more sort of day-to-day cyber hygiene, patching, provisioning, maintaining the network. So it's sort of useful to think about the sort of three categories of work, because there's sort of different work roles in each of those. I'd say one area of interest to potentially consider is maybe penetration testing. I think that's basically where the network owner hires a team to sort of be the hackers, to see how they can get in, where they can maneuver, what they can do offensively in your network in order to improve your cyber defense and cybersecurity. So they share that information back, and then instead of just following checklists of cybersecurity, you're actually making the network more secure based on that penetration testing. Some of the skills that you need to be a penetration tester would be, first of all, having a good understanding of cybersecurity, also understanding cyber defense mechanisms and activities, and then being creative, because you're going to sort of have that hacker mindset of how can you get in there, what can you do? So that's an area to consider as well.
Thank you, Ariel. I'm always really amazed at the skills you have to be a hacker, right? But being on this end of the on this side of the coin, if you will, is also important to really understand their mindset, how they think, and then really kind of test out, as you said, the penetration testing and using different strategies to make sure that, we have awareness of how that happens, number one, and how to prevent it, and also how to fix it if it does happen. So thank you so much, Ariel. All right, so the next question is for all three panelists. I will start with Adam, though. So Adam, for those who are just entering the field, what skills or certifications would you say are most valuable?
It's a great question, and it can be daunting, I think, because it's so an overwhelming field. I think it depends. I think something that Glenda hit also is there's like different directions you can kind of take with your path. So if you're still trying to understand the field better, to know what path you might take, the one organization that's got a lot of entry level certifications is CompTIA, CompTIA. They have, I think they're like more fundamental certifications are a lot around networks. Because I mean, really, one of the most challenging parts of getting into the cybersecurity field is you really have to have a great understanding of how IT networks work, understanding firewalls and boundaries, and I could go on virtual private clouds, and like there's a lot of stuff that you need to learn, even independent of the cloud, in order to really, if you're going to secure these things, you need to understand them. So some of those basic level, I think Network Plus is their entry level certification, and that will kind of give you a really solid foundation of what is the network, understanding how systems communicate with one another, what are the ports and protocols that are used. If that is the direction that sounds unappealing to you, I think there are more of the sort of analytic tools. And if you're starting to get into the more maybe data science driven elements of cybersecurity and how to analyze threats and trends, and maybe take some courses with like Python, or if you want to get a little more hands-on, Kali Linux is like the go-to if we're talking about penetration testing and you want to understand that a little bit more. Kali Linux is a free open source distribution of Linux that comes pre-packaged with a lot of the different tools that you would want as a penetration tester. I will give a caveat that you want to be very careful when you're using tools like that. And ideally, you use a computer that is kind of not your personal computer. You can start doing things that you might have repercussions beyond what you think they have. So always be careful when you're employing tools of that nature. But if you look online, take some courses like some intro Kali Linux courses, it's really interesting to see, oh, I can like look at the wireless networks around my house and understand like how easy it is to actually see some of those things. And it can be pretty illuminating how simple some of these tools are to use. And if you imagine then someone with advanced skills taking advantage of them, it's very eye-opening, and also very interesting. I mean, if that's the kind of career path you're interested in, those types of tools can be really fun and engaging and get you that hands-on experience that you might be looking for.
Thank you so much, Adam. So let me ask you, how important would you say is hands-on experience in the field of cybersecurity, and what are some ways folks can gain practical experience early on in their careers?
Right. Yeah. So I mean, I think it's very important. So in my role at where I come from, being able to articulate why we are recommending a security control, for example, for a system, or why we're recommending some sort of conceptual development or R&D effort or what have you for my clients, like the ability to have the understanding of the hands-on element of that, but be able to translate that into a higher level. So my client doesn't really care how it works, but he needs to know the bigger picture. How does this impact our business, our mission of our agency? So it's always helpful to be able to toe that line between talking to the decision makers and talking to the development teams. And if you have like I would never claim to be a developer. I'm not a pen tester, but I dabble enough where I have the skills to kind of talk to both of those groups. And being able to have those two sides of those conversations, this can be very helpful. And it can also, as you're dipping your toe in that entry level sort of hands-on, it can help you understand, is this the kind of career that I'm looking for? I've talked to many people who thought they wanted to be penetration testers, and as they got further along in their career, they realized, well, it sounds cool to be a hacker, an ethical hacker, right? But actually, the day in the life of that wasn't for them, and they sort of pivoted their career towards other things. And the skills that they learned by doing those sorts of certifications was really valuable in these other activities that they pursued when they sort of pivoted their career.
Got it. Thank you so much. Right, Glenda, me gustaría hacerte la misma pregunta. And I'm asking Glenda to answer, I'm asking Glenda the same question I just asked Adam. How important is hands-on experience, and what are some of the ways that we can gain that experience early on in our careers?
Okay. So for me, hands-on experience is really important, right? It lets you take what you've learned in theory and apply it to real life situations. I really do think you have to have a balance, right? When I see different candidates and I see people, that have many, many certifications, but yet, still lack the experience. And then, you have to have a balance, experience and certifications. But what I would say is if you're just starting out, right, I really think that you want to think about technology that you use every day, right? And understand how that what you're utilizing can also help organizations protect their assets, right? So for example, I gave you the example when it first started is that I learned to keep my diary safe, right? So for me, being able to correlate data protection, right, and apply that into the role that I'm in. So I think about, okay, well, think about your social media accounts, right? And the privacy controls that you put in place to protect your own information. So you may have a public account because you feel that you can share, you know, the information that you're sharing is okay for public viewing, which is great. But then you might also, you know, restrict that picture, you know, of your kids or the party last Friday. You may restrict that to, you know, different audiences, right? Because you put the necessary controls to protect that information. So for me, it's about thinking, if, you know, again, if you're starting out, think about the things that do relate to you in your everyday life because technology is everywhere, and then apply it to help you understand like what avenue or you know, that you want to get into. Another thing that I would say is if you are currently, you know, working in an organization or you're further down, you know, a little bit in your career, I would say consider, you know, job shadowing opportunities within your IT and cybersecurity team. It's going to help you also, you know, gain insight into the real life of cyber. You want to network. Again, my whole theme, I'm telling you, it's all about networking. And one thing that I would recommend, and I've seen this a lot with different people that ask me, you know, how to you know, get your foot in the door within your own organization is utilize your tools that you have. So for example, your organizational chart, right? And a lot of people, you'd be surprised. I ask them, oh, so who's your CISO or who's your CIO? And they have no clue. So that is super important, right? So that way you don't stalk them, but identify who they are. And there's a fine line between that. But you want to identify who these people are in your organization and, you know, knock on their door. Everybody says they have an open door policy. Talk to your manager, bridge those relationships. It's super important. Um, you know, and if there isn't a program in place already in your organization, that's a great idea to get one put in place, you know, a job shadowing. And then you can, you know, plan it out and propose how that's going to help everyone understand the business, data protection. So there's different things that you can do. I would say participate, you know, volunteer for additional tasks, things that, you know, that in your own personal development plan and what you want to do, you want to make sure that you know, put your own foot in the door, you know, knock on those doors and have those conversations. And again, like I said, while certifications I think are very, very important, I think that it helps you with gaining confidence, right? So you have something like backing you up, but also those real life situations reinforce what you're learning in theory to put in place into the field. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Glenda. I love the suggestion of put your own foot, through, because you have to make sure that, you have a voice, number one, and you got to be in the right place at the right time. And who better to put yourself there than yourself? So be bold is another suggestion I would say. So I'm going to go ahead and ask Ariel a slightly different question. So Ariel, what would you say are the opportunities for career growth within cybersecurity, and what roles or specializations offer the most potential?
Well, as Glenda pointed out, there are thousands of jobs out there, tons of different areas to work in. And as Adam mentioned, like there's certain work roles that might attract you more than others. Different personalities maybe are more better suited to different types of work roles. So there's a lot of opportunities out there, and there will be something that matches you. So I'll just give one example of something to consider. I think an area that is growing and has a lot of potential for more growth and needs more cybersecurity professionals is the area of the cybersecurity of operational technology. So operational technology, we like to say, is where cyber gets physical. So it's not just the IT networks and computers, but it's where like valves and switches are affecting physical things. And those are important for things like water infrastructure, electrical energy infrastructure. That area of critical infrastructure is a big one right now in the federal government as well as in DoD. It also applies in the private sector. If you've heard about the Internet of Things, we all want more like smart meters and program something from far away and have something like the thermostat in your house change or remotely start your car, those sort of things. It's very convenient, but the operational technology is often not built with cybersecurity intrinsic to it. So it has sort of default passwords, or the software doesn't get updated or patched, or you can't update the firmware in those devices. So they tend to be very vulnerable to cyber attack. So learning more about how to protect the operational technology, I think, is important, and it's a growing area.
Thank you. I think I got a little scared with that response because I do have the opportunity to change my thermostat through my phone, and I also have the remote start. So we'll have to talk more, Ariel. So thank you so much for that. So now I'd like to kind of switch over to talk about challenges, right? Challenges, stress, pressures of doing what we do. We all deal with the stress in our jobs and in different ways. So Glenda, would you say cybersecurity is a high pressure field? And if so, how do you personally manage the stress and stay updated on the latest threats and trends?
So I think, right, the pressures and the stress is all in perspective. I've worked at a company that was the most stressful situation ever in cybersecurity. It was very demanding. And I think it also depends on like the leadership, right? If you have really good leadership and people that you're working for and working with. But with that, so for myself, I would say that I definitely um, prioritize exercising in the morning. Working remote is awesome until you realize that all you do is sit all day, right? So getting out there and exercising definitely helps me, stay focused and energized. I have to juggle my family responsibilities with work. So again, that's the way I manage my stress. I would say for keeping up with the latest trends and emerging technology that's out there, every information is everywhere, right? And it's overwhelming sometimes to stay up to date with everything that's happening. So I do ingest information from different places. I do try to dedicate some time to read industry news, participate in conferences, and again, you got to engage with those professional networks to keep you updated. So from my perspective, it's always about staying informed and continuous learning.
Great, thank you so much. Also, Glenda, can you tell us about what were some of the challenges, right? I know you talked about, working from home is great, but you sit all day. But in your career as a cybersecurity expert, what were some of the challenges that you faced in your career, and how did you overcome them?
Okay. Yeah. So I've been working for a long time, Lisa. So I've seen many I've had many challenges. From being the only woman in a room, right, to having a leader whose management style was quite interesting, right, to put it nicely. But I think with every challenge, I really try to stay positive, and I use those challenges as learning opportunities, right? I know it sounds cliche, but it's so true, because if not, you'll go crazy. But now I think in conferences, being the only woman in the room, I don't see it as a negative thing, right? I'm now more comfortable, right? So definitely things have changed for number one. I've seen the change in our partners and men. They're very much more supportive and inclusive, and I think that is hugely due to our changing time, having different conferences, and getting that talk out there. I think, that has tremendously changed. And then also knowing my strengths and what, I contribute and what I bring to the table. So now it's more of a, I don't mind it at all, right? And then I think from the other challenge from having a challenging manager, like I said, the time was very difficult going through it, but it taught me a few things, right? And one, it was that I never wanted to be the kind of boss who manages through intimidation, right? I wanted to be someone who leads by building people's strengths. And also, it taught me that, I would never, how to recognize the red flags a lot sooner, right? And so, I refuse to work for someone who has those red flags. And, happy to say that now my manager who I've worked with, like I mentioned earlier, that I followed him in two different companies, right? So completely, a great leader, and that's who I want to continue to work for. But again, while all these experiences, are tough, when you're going through them at that time, it definitely has contributed and shaped, who I am today. So.
Great. Thanks so much, Glenda. The one thing that I will say, I'm also a little worried. You've followed your manager to two different jobs, so we better treat our CIO really well because I don't want to lose either one of them. Thank you so much, Glenda. Ariel, I'd like to ask you the same question. What challenges have you faced in your career and how did you overcome them?
So probably similar to a lot of people on this call who are looking to transition into the cybersecurity field. I went through that as well. And so as you transition to a new field, it can be hard to gain the experience that you need to have the skills that you'll need in that new role. As I said, I was lucky at CNA to be able to observe cyber operations and observe a real world network intrusion, which was very informative. And CNA was supportive of that. I'd recommend wherever you are currently, you could start with reaching out to your company to see if they will pay for any courses or support any learning that you could do that would help you to gain those skills. They might be open to that. And if that doesn't work out, just being open to opportunities, no matter how small, to build your experience, like even starting with your own home computer network, trying things out on there, using books and learning tools to learn those skills. Also, like sometimes professional organizations sometimes hold hackathons or other events like that. And that's a great way to meet other people who are getting into that field and to try out your skills on a higher level, and also sometimes get feedback from the people who are running those sort of events.
Great. Thank you so much, Ariel. Well, let's kind of talk about the future. Technology is an ever-changing field, and in some cases, as we know, it changes very quickly. Glenda, question for you. How do you see the field evolving in the next 5 to 10 years? And how should we all prepare for the future?
So, with technology, it changes, right? We've all seen it from AI, right? ChatGPT. I do see that these advancements as augmenting our jobs versus replacing our jobs. So I'm a huge proponent is in order to prepare, use it, utilize that technology, right? ChatGPT, have it help you update your resume, right? Have it help you create your own plans. But I'm a big proponent of use the tools in real world situations so that you have practical and a full understanding, right, of what they are and how to use them. I would also say, again, I'm going to just repeat, right, is continue with your continuous education, your networking, and remain competitive so that we're all remaining competitive in this field.
Great. Thanks for that advice. So the next question is for all three of our panelists, and we'll start with Adam. Adam, what advice would you give to folks interested in pursuing a career in cybersecurity?
Yeah, thanks, Lisa. Going back quickly, I guess this kind of relates to challenges and advice is that, so I work in a lot of the like sort of software development, systems engineering world. And the biggest challenge is the constant battle between functionality and security. So basically, when you are trying to sell the idea that we need to add additional security beyond whatever exists, you are going to butt up against people who are trying to add additional functionality, and ultimately there's only so much money to go around and so much time to go around. And it's sort of a constant, and so you need to be able to articulate the need, the risk reward, and yeah, the cost benefit analysis, and you need to be able to think about that in a way that resonates with the decision makers, which can be difficult. Ultimately they say, well, nothing happened last month, so why do we need more security this month? And that could be a hard argument to win, and you need to be prepared for that argument. So one of the other things I think to be careful of as you start if you start going to conferences and going to maybe webinars and things and start sort of dipping your toes in the cybersecurity water, is that there's a lot of buzzwords out there and a lot of fluff out there. And you have to be careful that you are able to understand what a vendor is saying and what they can and maybe cannot do. Like, so often my clients will come to me with questions about a claim that a vendor is selling them on some capability, and they're looking at it as like, well, we have, I don't know, maybe some requirement from Congress to meet some capability, and like, well, this vendor says they can just do it. Why don't I just buy this? And then you have to sort of like help them understand what the vendor is saying and like where reality sits from the technology landscape right now. I guess going completely full circle. So I will also second that Glenda's boss is amazing. And I had a request from a client on one of the vendors that they were looking at, and it was actually a vendor that we at CNA had implemented. And I was talking to some of my colleagues, and I was like, I'm gonna go see if I can talk to the CIO about this. He implemented it, and my colleagues were like, really? Like, you think he's gonna want to talk to you about this? And I was like, I think so. He's like a technical person, and like he probably doesn't get to have these kinds of conversations very often. And I reached out to him, and he was just thrilled to talk to me and like to give me his lessons learned from having implemented it. And like, so like, I think my initial inclination is like, well, maybe he won't want to talk to me. I'm not that important. But like, those people do want to have those conversations, and they're always willing to engage, and like lessons learned are always like great to pass down. So just like take the step, take the next step, like go a little further than you might feel comfortable, because it'll always pay off in my experience. And it paid off really well in that situation. So it's a lot of rambling, I guess, but there's a few kernels of truth in there that'll be helpful for folks, I think.
Thank you so much, Adam. Same question, Ariel.
Thanks, Adam. I love that story. Thanks for sharing that. So I guess one practical thing that I think hopefully will be helpful to all of you is I definitely recommend, if you're not familiar with it, checking out the NIST workforce framework for cybersecurity. It's basically a framework that a whole team of people came up with to try to chart out all the specific work roles in cyber. And it gives you what the certification requirements are and the education requirements for each of those work roles. So that can be really helpful to give you a better understanding of that. It applies to the public and private sector and also applies across various industries. And another nice feature is it also sort of helps you map out these work roles into a career path. So it shows like how you progress, like which are entry level, and then how you would progress in that career, and also like where you could potentially switch over to like from defensive towards offensive, that sort of thing. So that is really helpful. If you want to search for it, if you just search for NIST NICE framework, you'll find it. This NICE, that's the National Initiative for Cybersecurity Education. Those are very helpful resources.
Wonderful. Thanks for that tip. All right, Glenda.
Yeah, and I would definitely chat GPT it how to get started and tie it all together. So anyways, what I wanted to say, I had an interesting observation, and it was an actual study, right? That how women approach job requirements and how they approach it much differently than men, right? And so what was interesting is that women will see a list of 5 skills and say, oh, I only have one of those skills, right? While men might look at that same job requirements and think, I got 1 out of the 5, right? So that difference in perception can hold women back in pursuing opportunities that they're capable of handling. I know I'm one of them, right? So that's my new thing now. I look at a list, I'm like, I got this. And what I don't know, I chat GPT it. And right? And I start learning. I mean, it's you're gaining information. I mean, you still have to, make sure it's true, your source, but it at least helps you break things down to gain additional knowledge. So my advice to all of you is go for it, right? Every job is a learning experience. And when you're looking at job requirements, focus on the skills that you do have and how they apply to the role that you want, right? So I know I keep saying that little example of my diary, which, but it's just to make sense in our minds that you do have a lot of the skill sets. It's just how we portray that confidence, right? And if you feel that, okay, you know what, these job requirements are a little bit, more than what I'm currently capable of, then build your plan on how you're going to gain that experience, whether it's going to be job shadowing somebody, volunteering for something, chat GPTing it and figuring out how to do it, right? So, but you want to make sure that you take like a personal inventory. So I do look at job requirements even now, and I say, okay, for my current role, these are the things that if I had a, if say, hey, come work for me again, right? These are the things that they're looking for. So how do I stay relevant? Right. So then I start looking at that. Oh, I do need to freshen up on my NIST controls or, some government regulations, whatever that is. But you want to look at what's out there. Use it as a plan. Information is everywhere. Look at, a job at, I'm just going to say like NASA, right? Sounds awesome. Well, what are their job requirements? And then start putting your plan together on how you're going to bridge those gaps. So you want to shift from what you lack to what you can learn, right? And you want to empower yourself to take on those new challenges. So honestly, it's not fake it till you make it. It's be your best self, right? Recognize your own capabilities, embrace them, and move forward. Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Go for it. We got this,
Go for
right?
it.
All right,
Yes.
so thank you so much. I appreciate your insights. We've covered a lot of ground, but I know that I've been seeing the chat very busy, so I know that you all may have some questions of your own for each of our panelists. So I'm going to turn things over to Juana. Juana, if you want to moderate or go through some of the questions in the chat.
Yes, of course. And also too, just to answer, I know there's been a couple questions in the chat saying if this event's recorded, and it is. We actually are recording the panel discussion, so we will be sharing that post-event. And we'll also have time remaining afterwards for breakout sessions directly with our panelists. So if you have time, please remain for the next 3 minutes after the Q&A. But for questions here from the chat, we have one here that says, what are the best qualifications, classes, or options to take if wanting to get into cybersecurity, especially if your bachelor's is not in the technical field?
I'll just
go ahead.
Sorry, I'll just put a quick plug in for SANS. I mentioned before, SANS. They host a lot of classes and training, multi-day sometimes. They take their classes all over the country, and they also have online classes. And I found those to be very helpful and relevant.
Yeah. Go ahead, Glenda.
Okay. I was just going to say, I don't really think that you have to have a degree in cyber. Okay. I have seen plenty of professionals, and I'm going to say the previous company I worked for, the CISO, who is a world-renowned CISO, it was a history major. So I don't think that, you have to have a cybersecurity degree. Yeah, sure, it's great. So I'm not trying to diminish anyone, of course. But I do think, again, it's about how you have confidence and how you portray yourself. And, there's, as Ariel mentioned, there's different certifications. So it depends on, what part of cybersecurity also that you want to get into. But I wouldn't sell yourself short, or I mean, I know you wouldn't, but like, you have a degree, you have a backing. It doesn't necessarily mean it has to be a cybersecurity. But okay, go ahead, Adam.
No, yeah, I second that. My degree has nothing to do with cybersecurity. My nanotechnology had nothing to do with security at all. There's two organizations for those who are interested. So for more entry level, kind of like conceptual stuff, CompTIA is, I think it's a decent, like they've got some entry level. They have more advanced things as well, but some of their entry level courses are useful for just like sort of getting your feet wet. And then if you're interested in going further, their offensive security is they have some pretty robust certifications as well for the more kind of penetration testing career path. So those would be two that I would just highlight.
Thank you so much. Let's see. We have a question related to mentorship as far as like how to navigate, getting a mentor or a sponsorship through the cybersecurity community.
Seems like that's dependent on your network. Maybe Glenda, you have some thoughts there. I think it's being able to. I think if you are engaged in a community, then you're naturally going to meet people like I don't know, I'm like in the aviation cybersecurity domain and I go to conferences and different events and like you kind of see the same group and as you attend. I mean, the first couple times you attend, you're like kind of figuring it out and you're just meeting people, but like as you progress, you'll slowly meet people and maybe make those connections, reach out to them via email, and like people are usually pretty generous when they can be. So I would start there and just be engaged and open and try and I guess be talkative at these types of events, try and talk to people. You can be transparent about you're trying to get in. Like, there's no need to be an expert when you walk into these rooms all the time. You can start wherever you need to be.
Yeah, I agree. I think, mentoring is a very personal thing and it really it's up to you. You drive it. You gotta knock on that door, call the person up. Hey, I really like what you're doing. Will you be my mentor? I mean, sounds silly, but that's how you build connections, right? And then also look at like there was a term, being the person's like champion versus mentor. But regardless of which route you go, is calling that person up, hey, will you be my mentor? But you need to make sure that you're driving those conversations. It is not up to your mentor, right? You want to make sure that if you do get that foot in the door, that you utilize your time, their time, and that you're steering those conversations and not wasting your mentor's time because it can be right daunting sometimes with all of the different responsibilities everybody has, but just keep that in mind. But like I said, I think the mentorship programs, or they don't have to be formal, it could be informal, but you need to take ownership for yourself and drive that.
Thank you so much. I think that that's pretty much all we have of questions. Anyone else want to ask another question? I know that we have just a lot of specific questions related to like navigating, pivoting into cybersecurity roles, which you've already mentioned beforehand. And just like what courses to take or what kind of resources you offer. Anything else your team wants to add before we go into breakout rooms, or we can go ahead and go into breakout rooms? No? Okay, no worries at all. We can definitely go ahead and go into breakout rooms. As mentioned to all of our participants who are still on the call, we are going to begin breakout room sessions, and I'm going to quickly explain what that looks like in a minute. Give me 1 second. Um, you should all be able to see a shared screen, which I don't know if it's still... Okay, I think it's uploading now. Awesome. So there will be 3 breakout rooms that are going to be opened for 30 minutes. Each of those rooms will have one of our recruiters, but also 2 of our panelist members in there for you all to connect with and just ask some deeper questions and deep dive into more specific questions you have for them. And so the process will go is that I will open them up in a couple of seconds, and you should be able to see the breakout rooms open underneath your panel. So on the panel where you have like your audio and your video button, you should also see a panel button that says breakout rooms. When you see that, it'll light up with a red button and click on the room that you want to go into. The rooms that are labeled here on the screen are the rooms you'll find in your breakout room session. So I'm going to go ahead right now and open up the rooms. If anyone has any issues going into the room, please let me know and just remain in the main room and I'll be able to move you to that room. But rooms are not open, so please feel free to go into the rooms.